you steal in your drafts. What's going on, football fans and fantasy freaks? It's Mitch here, giving you my sleepers of the 2024 fantasy football season. The gems that will win you your league this fantasy season. Before I get started, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe for more fantasy football content and advice here on OwnersBox Fantasy. Also, let me know in the comments section below your opinion on the biggest sleeper at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And before I get started, I must mention that all of these sleepers are at the end of the draft. 100 plus in average draft position according to Fantasy Pros. So these players are the last picks of your draft. At quarterback, we begin with a player going right at number 100, that is Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy's argument is pretty simple. He finished in the top 6 in fantasy points last year. He was a fantasy gem in 2023, and he will be again in 2024 because nobody actually believes in Brock Purdy for some reason, except for me. The 49ers have the best offense in the NFL. The Niners seem closer and closer to getting that deal done with Brock Purdy's deep threat and vertical threat, Brandon Ayuk. They have one of the best tight ends in football, the best yak threat in Deebo Samuel, and of course the best dual threat running back in CMC. Not to mention, they have the best play caller in the NFL with Kyle Shanahan. It's pretty simple. Brock Purdy is in year 3. He's more comfortable in the offense, and he's still going as a borderline starting quarterback in fantasy, despite being in the top 5 in MVP votes. So the math doesn't really work, but Brock Purdy's going to be productive for your fantasy team again. And the thing I love about Purdy is he'll be very consistent because the offense is extremely consistent. The second fantasy sleeper at quarterback is Trevor Lawrence. T-Law currently is drafted at 120th overall. He was actually the QB8 in 2022. So he has already finished as a QB1 in his career. And I believe that this will be Trevor Lawrence's best statistical season. I think if he stays healthy, which he didn't last year, he will be on pace to be a QB1. Trevor Lawrence does have sneaky rushing ability where he will contribute with a few scrambles, a few first downs, and a couple touchdowns. He also is really good at that goal line, like jump over the top for the 1-yard score. So look out for a few of those this season. Brian Thomas Jr., I'm a big believer in. He actually might also be in this video. And he's a first-round pick that I think has really high upside. Evan Ingram is reliable and a move-the-chains tight end. Christian Kirk is back at slot receiver. Gabe Davis was also added to stretch the field. They have multiple weapons, including Travis Etienne in the backfield. This is a pass-first offense. They love to throw the football. Even when Lawrence went down, this team still finished in the top 8 in terms of pass attempts. Doug Peterson is a pass-first offensive guy. Lawrence is their guy. He's their franchise quarterback. They paid him for a reason. I think in fantasy, he is extremely slept on in 2024. The third fantasy sleeper at the quarterback position is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford gets drafted 140th overall, and I think he could finish as a top 12 QB. Look, I just feel like the entire Rams offense is not being treated like the elite unit that it actually is. With Sean McVay and Stafford on the field and healthy, and then you have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. With that unit, it's a top 10, if not top 5 offense. In fact, when Stafford and Kyron Williams were healthy together, they were the second best offense in the NFL last year, only behind Kyle Shanahan's Niners. Shanahan, McVay, they're looked at as the boy geniuses of the NFL, and I just think it's going to continue. Stafford is one of the game's pure passers that's just wicked from the pocket, and he's going to find Nacua and a revitalized Kupp all over defenses all season long. Throw in Demarcus Robinson, throw in Parkinson, throw in Stafford potentially having to be in shootouts with not my favorite defense on the other side, and you could have a pretty big season, a 30-touchdown type of campaign from Matthew Stafford, and I wouldn't be shocked if he finished as a back-end QB1. So honestly, you can get him basically for free, and you could get and wait the whole draft for Stafford to fill your quarterback position. My final quarterback sleeper is Gino Smith of the Seattle Seahawks, who is being drafted 182nd overall. You probably won't want to draft him in one quarterback leagues, but in deeper leagues, maybe like 16-team leagues or even 2 quarterback leagues, I think you can absolutely steal Gino Smith. Right? Gino Smith was actually a quarterback 1 a couple years ago. He was the leader in NFC touchdown passes in his first ever season starting for the Seattle Seahawks, which was 2022. And Geno Smith, when you look at his supporting cast, there's no reason to not believe this guy won't be productive. Like, they just added Connor Williams at center, which was their biggest weakness on the offensive line. Kenneth Walker is a stud of a running back. They have a new offensive system. They have DK Metcalf, one of the game's biggest beasts at wide receiver, Tyler Lockett, who's extremely reliable, and JSN entering year 2, plus Noah Fant at tight end, one of the most athletic tight ends in football. So if you believe the Seahawks are going to be good and better than people think, and if you think that the Seahawks are going to flirt with the playoffs, and if you think this offense is going to produce for JSN and for Noah Fant and for Kenneth Walker and for DK Metcalf, then buy in on Geno Smith. He's the guy getting them the ball. So Geno Smith, just criminally underrated. I think he's a much better passer than people believe, and he's much more aggressive than people believe. I also think this offense will be much more pass heavy in 2024. So Geno is a steal at 182nd overall. Moving to the running back position, I'm not going to continue to preach to pick Rico Dowdle and Chase Brown, but I will just say pick Rico Dowdle and Chase Brown. They're not actual selections in this video, but I'm just throwing them out there once again because I've already talked about them like 8 times. So the first guy that I actually want to talk about here in the sleeper video is Taj Spears, who I've yet to talk about, and I think he must be discussed. He's going 102nd overall, and I was a huge fan of Taj Spears coming out of college, but the thing that threw it a wrench in it, I mean, Spears would have been like one of my favorite breakout picks of this fantasy season, if not for the signing of Tony Pollard. And that signing of Tony Pollard has completely kind of ruined my hype on Taj Spears. But honestly, where he goes in drafts, he's worth the investment. Going in the hundreds as a guy that's as talented as he is, being that he had 51 receptions as a rookie running back, and he had the most third down fantasy points among all players in 2023. I mean, that's really impressive. So Taj Spears is a great ball carrier. He's physical, he's tough, he's got great balance, he's got great vision, he's got really good quick cutting ability, and he's an excellent pass catcher. He's a 3-down running back. And so him and Tony Pollard, I see as kind of like a 1A, 1B, but the way they're being drafted is that Pollard is purely the 1 and Spears is purely the 2 as a backup. I don't see it that way. I think Spears is worth the upside. What if Tony Pollard is more like Dallas Cowboy Tony Pollard at the end, where he's not that explosive and Spears clearly looks better and outplays him? The Titans will be forced to play Spears. Plus, they already love him in pass-catching situations, so you could see 2 backs similar to Najee Harris and Jalen Warren last year being extremely productive in even a bad offense because they both split carries, split work, and split valuable touches. So Spears, especially being that he's explosive, he's younger, he's a year 2 running back, and he gets a lot of pass work. That makes him really intriguing where he goes in drafts. J.K. Dobbins, 121st overall, is another sleeper to target. His only competition with the Chargers is Gus Edwards. And last time I checked, when J.K. Dobbins was healthy entering a year, he was the starter in Baltimore for the same offensive coordinator and Greg Roman ahead of Gus Edwards. So essentially, we're drafting Gus Edwards ahead of Dobbins due to the contract, due to Gus Edwards being paid more. But what if the Chargers signed J.K. Dobbins just as a potential dart throw? If he's healthy, fantastic, he's our guy. But if not, oh well, it's just a 1-year contract. So for me, I just view it as if Dobbins is healthy, which all reports suggest that he is, and he's looked good in camp, and the media loves him, and obviously the coaches know what he is. If Dobbins is healthy, he's more talented than Gus Edwards. He's more explosive. He is a demon running the football. He is bouncing off people left and right. And I think that at this point, Gus Edwards has clearly shown a decline in his play the last 2 or 3 years in his explosiveness, his yards per carry. He's also a guy that's had major injuries in his career. Like, he was played out of basically an essential task last year. Like, he was not the guy they really wanted to go to in Baltimore. So To me, I just feel like Dobbins is a steal at 121st overall. He could be the starter for the Justin Herbert offense in a system that he already knows. So just pick him up and see what happens with the Charger backfield. You never know. J.K. Dobbins could end up as an RB2 in fantasy. Ty Chandler at 135th overall. Ty Chandler could easily see starting snaps for the Vikings. Now, people are going to say, well, what about Aaron Jones? Exactly. Aaron Jones gets hurt a lot. So as soon as Aaron Jones goes down or misses those 6 games, you could have a fantasy starter in Ty Chandler, an efficient runner in Ty Chandler, a guy that can handle pass work in Ty Chandler. And even when Aaron Jones is in, he's not known as a guy that's going to take 20 touches a game. He's older, he's got a lot of wear and tear, and he's somebody that has never been a pure 3-down back because he's not big enough to handle that load, and he's shown that he can't stay healthy with that load. So to me, I look at Ty Chandler and I say he's got injury contingency. He's also got a solid backup workload when Aaron Jones is actually healthy, and that provides value in fantasy. So he could be somebody that you could utilize in a trade for a 4-week stretch where Aaron Jones is out for a month, and you could throw him into a trade. You could have him start for 4 weeks in a 0 RB type of build. You could have him as an RB2 or a flex throughout your season. He's an extremely valuable asset that's getting overlooked. Or what if Jones even misses the entire year after starting the first 4 games? You've got yourself an RB2 for the rest of the year. So Ty Chandler to me is just tied to, he's a pretty talented guy. The coaching staff likes him, and he's tied to a guy that gets hurt a lot. Then we have Kahlil Herbert, who's being drafted 181st overall. This is absolutely crazy considering the work that Kahlil Herbert has handled in the preseason. He has basically been the number 2 back in Chicago and arguably the 1B. He's also worked a lot with the first team in training camp. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kahlil Herbert was just flat out better than DeAndre Swift, to be honest with you. Herbert is a more explosive runner. He's a better runner in between the tackles, in my opinion. Swift is probably the better pass catcher and things like that. But it wouldn't be shocking if Kahlil Herbert, a guy that we were drafting last year in the 7th or 8th round in money big leagues because we thought he could be a breakout candidate, he's an efficient runner when he's at opportunity. He's looked great in the preseason. So I just view Kahlil Herbert as somebody that's looking real hot this offseason and could even steal the job from DeAndre Swift, who, yes, got a contract, got the money, but again, this is the running back position. Right? Contracts don't really mean a lot to me. Injuries happen. Swift is injury prone. Swift was not super efficient with the Eagles last year despite a great situation. Herbert is efficient running the ball. So look out for Kahlil Herbert as a late round stash. Then finally, at running back, Jordan Mason being drafted 262nd, which is absolute, in a criminal offense. You should be put in jail for this ranking at 262nd in ADP. Jordan Mason is the RB2 in San Francisco, aka the best running scheme in football, aka the best offense in football. So if Christian McCaffrey, who already has a calf injury, gets injured and misses a couple games, he's an RB2, 100%. Even if Elijah Mitchell also gets work, Jordan Mason's probably going to get 15 carries in a game because the Niners like to run the ball. And Jordan Mason is a legit good player, especially carrying the ball in between the tackles. So him going so late is just absolute insanity. So yeah, Jordan Mason, he's definitely somebody as a handcuff type that if you have McCaffrey, you definitely need to prioritize. But if you don't have McCaffrey, you can steal from the McCaffrey owner, utilize him as trade leverage, utilize him as trade bait, but also utilize him as an RB2 if CMC does go down. At wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. is my first pick, going 117th overall. He was a top, 20 pick in the NFL draft, and he's going 117th overall? Are we on drugs, people? Brian Thomas Jr. can run a 4.3. He's 6'4". He stops on a dime. He's massive. Why is Brian Thomas Jr. in home leagues going in the 110 range? That makes no sense. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to maybe be the best receiver on the Jags in year 1. I wouldn't be shocked by that. Trevor Lawrence loves to throw the ball down the field. Imagine getting our 2 sleepers here, Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas. If you're in best ball, it's a great look. But also in leagues, you could pair these 2 together and potentially have some really high upside with these 2. I loved Thomas in the draft. I thought he was just as good as Roma Dunze, and Roma Dunze has been pretty much skyrocketed to the moon in fantasy, and Brian Thomas is not. So definitely a huge sleeper there. Just a freak athlete that's a good football player. Khalil Shakir goes 126th in fantasy drafts, which is crazy because he's probably the best overall route runner and separator in the Bills receiving core, including young Dalton Kincaid at tight end. Like, when the Bills face man coverage, they're going to face man coverage because teams are going to be like, well, yeah, Josh Allen is going to run on us, but okay. Like, these receivers can't really get open that much. They're going to take the chief formula. Khalil Shakir is the guy that's going to get open. So Josh Allen's going to look for Khalil Shakir. He's also the one, statistically speaking, that's been the most impressive in his young career. He's been great after the catch. He's been great in his efficiency, in his yards per target, and stats like that. All the efficiency statistics show how productive and good Khalil Shakir is. Even if he's only a slot receiver, we've seen slot receivers like, let's say, even Christian Kirk thrive, right? Especially with a team that has Josh Allen on it. Like, he's going to be looking in the middle of the field. He's going to be looking for his little man that can create after the catch. So Shakir could be the direct Stephon Diggs replacement in terms of the shifty, quick route runner that separates. So Shakir is the guy with the rapport with Allen. He's worth a shot at 126th. Josh Palmer, a guy that has rapport with Justin Herbert, is going 133rd in your drafts, and it's absolutely outrageous. I think Josh Palmer could be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy this year. He could go for 1,000 yards. He could catch 75 passes. Ladd McConkey is going ahead of him as a rookie, which kind of does make sense in terms of upside, but Ladd McConkey is injury prone. He's been injured all training camp. He was injured at Georgia quite a bit. He is a good route runner in that, but he's probably only going to play in the slot, while Josh Palmer is a guy that Herbert has already expressed can play X, can play Z, can play slot, can play everywhere. And he's the guy with rapport with Herbert. Herbert, meanwhile, is not participating in training camp because he's injured. Palmer is a legit good player, and he's shown that upside when Keenan Allen or Mike Williams has been injured. Last year, he showed a yards per reception. That was the best of his career. The previous season, he put up like near 70 catches in a year. This is a guy that can play, and I think is going far too late for somebody that's tied to one of the most accurate pocket passers in football. Rasheed Shahed is going 144th in your drafts. He's being slept on. Rasheed Shahed is the clear number 2 target for the New Orleans offense, who has a pocket quarterback who is accurate, who is able to run an offense in Derek Carr. I'm not a huge fan of Alvin Kamara this year. I'm not a huge fan of the offensive line. I don't really know what to make of Jawan Johnson. So that just means like Chris Olave is going to get a ton of targets, but somebody else has to catch the ball. Could it be Rasheed Shahed, who's wicked fast, can stretch the field, can get down the field, and shown explosive aspects to his game? Like, he could easily finish the season as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, could easily be a flex option that you're starting because of his explosive upside. This could be somebody that maybe occasionally doesn't get targeted in terms of like volume, but he could be a boom type of player, like weekly, where if Shahed just gets a couple catches, he could make something happen, right? That's the type of player he is. He actually showed in some metrics that he was a better route runner and a better separator than even Chris Olave. So he has extreme upside. I just think he's a generally underrated talent, and he has so much opportunity. There's really nobody else on his offense other than Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave that are going to catch the football at a consistent basis. So Rasheed Shahed, if he stays healthy, is going to be an absolute score and value in your fantasy drafts. Demario Douglas is drafted 190th in fantasy drafts, probably going undrafted in a lot of your leagues. And Demario Douglas is probably the best receiver in New England. They do have Jalen Polk, they do have Javon Baker, they do have Hunter Henry. In terms of names that they want to make happen there in New England, Kendrick Bourne will be coming back from injury. He's going to be on the PUP early in the year. Demario Douglas is the guy that's consistently making waves in training camp for his ability to not be covered by anybody, right? Demario Douglas is the guy that separates, similar to Khalil Shakir. And I believe in separation talent. I believe in route running. When you can route run and you can get open, you're a quarterback's best friend, especially quarterbacks like Jacoby Brissett, who have a long, deliberate release and are not the most accurate, or a rookie quarterback who's used to playing in college, right? So they like to see guys running open, like Drake May. So to me, and also Drake May's favorite receiver in college was who? Josh Downs. Pretty much the same type of receiver, Demario Douglas. So either way, I see Demario Douglas like having the most catches on the Patriots. He's primarily going to play the slot, but he's also the guy that's going to get manufactured touches. He's a great yards after catch option. He was one of the best in the NFL last year, and he's probably going to catch like 70 balls at least. So, and New England's going to be trailing in a lot of games. So he's a great late round pick. And then my final one at wide receiver is Greg Dortch, the Torch. My guy, Greg Dortch, the most drafted player in best ball for me this offseason. I think he's going to be the number 3 option in their receiving game, and he's the slot for the Cardinals. And all reports in training camp is that he's been absolutely uncoverable. Like, the guy cannot be stopped in the middle of the field. His ability to change direction, his ability to make quick cuts. He was torching the Colts secondary up and down the field, even in the rain. So this is a guy that Jonathan Gannon has consistently praised for being such a good football player, tough, feisty, and like I said, very precise route runner. So when Marvin Harrison Jr. is lining up out wide and taking the number 1 corner, Greg Dortch is the guy that's going to get the matchup in the middle of the field, and he could see 60-plus catches. He's very, very underrated as a player. So in deeper leagues, I love Greg Dortch as a player that could start on your fantasy squads. At the tight end position, we're going to start with Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I brought him up before at 125th. That's where he's being drafted, and I think he's going to finish as a tight end 1 this year, as long as the Brandon Ayuk thing stays in San Francisco. I think Pat Freiermuth will be an absolute steal. He's easily the second best receiving option in Pittsburgh. It's not even particularly close. He's also had multiple good seasons in the NFL already with 60-plus catches. He's one of the better yards after catch options at the tight end position. He stays on the field because he's a good blocker, and Arthur Smith loves to manufacture touches to guys like Gino Smith in the past, right? So Pat Freiermuth really fits his type of mold. So love him at 125th. You can wait on tight end for Pat in your drafts. Isaiah Likely at 183rd is insanity, because Isaiah Likely is the rare tight end that has injury contingency to the point where if Isaiah Likely is on your team, you may not be playing him while Mark Andrews is healthy. You might be. There's a chance that Isaiah Likely is their slot receiver this year. There's actually a decent chance that their base personnel is 2 tight end formations, because from all reports, Isaiah Likely is better than Rashad Bateman. So if that's the case, he should be on the field more likely than not. Get it? But also, I feel like if Mark Andrews gets hurt, which at his age, it's likely, he's already been injured in training camp, he's a top 12 tight end in fantasy. So Isaiah Likely is a great pick for multiple reasons. Kobe Parkinson goes 259th in fantasy drafts. Kobe Parkinson of the Rams is going to start for the Los Angeles Rams at tight end in week 1. Tyler Higbee's injured. He's got a terrible injury he's trying to work back from. Kobe Parkinson, they signed from the Seahawks. He's an underrated athlete, decent receiver, can block, and he's going to be on the field like 70% of plays, because the Rams don't really like to change their personnel. They love to stay in 11 personnel. They love to be able to have the same running back, the same tight end, the same 3 receivers. So that's Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Demarcus Robinson, Kyron Williams, and Kobe Parkinson. So that means Kobe Parkinson is being drafted at 259 when Tyler Higbee has been a pretty significant tight end in fantasy past. And also, Parkinson is probably at this point more athletic than Tyler Higbee. I mean, so he could actually finish the season as their starting tight end, and I wouldn't really be that surprised. So Kobe Parkinson is just an absolute steal, a late-round tight end gem. And my final late-round tight end gem is Greg Dulcich at 234th, who does actually go ahead of Kobe Parkinson. Greg Dulcich, depends on the format. Like, in best ball, Parkinson actually goes ahead of Dulcich, but it depends on the platform. According to Fantasy Bros, he goes a little bit ahead. But Greg Dulcich is a great athlete, great after the catch, had a great rookie season. He's entering year 3 after missing year 2, and everybody forgot about him after year 2. And I could make a strong argument that he's going to be in the top 3 in receptions for the Denver Broncos, given that he could be the joker in Sean Payton's offense, which in the past has been featured like Jimmy Graham or Marquise Colston, bigger targets in the middle of the field. And given that the Broncos really don't have a lot of guys that can create after the catch, right? Guys like Cortland Sutton are jump ball winners. Tim Patrick's coming back from injury. He's not the most like separator, get open, create yards after catch type. He's kind of like Cortland Sutton in a way. And then you've got younger guys that they don't really know what they're going to get, like Marvin Mims, right? But Greg Dulcich could play a unique role in terms of his ability to create yards after catch from short passes. So he could actually be a pretty interesting PPR type of tight end pick late in your drafts that ends up being close to a tight end 1 type of player. So those are my fantasy sleepers entering the 2024 fantasy season. If you enjoyed, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.